Have you ever wondered why we follow rules? Why we listen to leaders, obey laws, or accept authority? It seems so natural, so ingrained in us. But it wasn't always this way. For a vast stretch of human history, the concepts of kings, laws, and empires simply didn't exist. Imagine a world where no one commanded and no one was expected to follow. Life was a daily struggle for survival, a personal, equal, and deeply uncertain affair. You relied on your own strength, your own wits. There was no safety net, no one telling you what to do. But humanity is a social species. As the world grew more dangerous, as challenges became too big for one person to handle alone, we started to depend on each other. We formed small groups, families, and tribes. And in these groups, a fundamental shift began to happen. Decisions that were once personal, like where to hunt or when to move camp, became shared conversations. A successful hunt required coordination. Fending off a predator required a unified defense. In these crucial moments, some voices naturally carried more weight. Maybe it was the experienced hunter who always found game, or the wise elder who knew the seasons and the stars. People started listening to them not because they were forced to, but because it made sense. Their guidance led to better outcomes, more food, greater safety, a higher chance of survival for everyone. This wasn't command, it was trust. A practical, earned trust that formed the very bedrock of early human cooperation. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, this trust began to evolve. What started as voluntary listening gradually hardened into expectation. The group began to rely on that trusted voice, and following their advice became the norm, the unwritten rule. This is the moment humanity first learned to obey. It wasn't born from a desire for power, but from a desperate need for survival. Survival created the first rules, and these rules, in turn, created the first whispers of authority. This new authority wasn't about domination. It was a tool for collective action. When a leader said, "We move at dawn," it wasn't a threat. It was a strategy for the group's well-being. Obedience was the glue that held the group together, allowing for complex, coordinated efforts that were impossible before. It allowed us to build stronger shelters, organize larger hunts, and defend ourselves more effectively. In essence, obedience became a superpower, an evolutionary advantage that propelled our ancestors forward. But this new power came with a profound trade-off. By accepting authority, we sacrificed a piece of our individual autonomy for the sake of collective security. The line between a trusted guide and a commanding ruler began to blur. As societies grew from small bands into larger tribes and eventually into chiefdoms and kingdoms, the nature of authority changed. It became more formal, more centralized, and often hereditary. The personal trust that once defined leadership was slowly replaced by a system of power, backed by laws, traditions, and force. The consequences of disobedience became more severe. What was once a simple disagreement could now be seen as a challenge to the entire social order. This was the birth of politics, of governance, and of the complex social hierarchies that define our world today. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? The world didn't change the moment someone first craved power. It changed the moment the rest of humanity accepted it. That single act of acceptance, repeated over countless generations, is what built civilizations. It's what created armies, constructed pyramids, and wrote the laws we still live by. The story of obedience is the story of us, of how we traded absolute freedom for collective strength, and in doing so, reshaped human society forever. What do you think? Was this trade-off worth it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The first topic is life without command. Have you ever wondered what human life was like before anyone gave orders? Before there was a boss, a king, or even a leader? Let's travel back to the very dawn of our existence, to a time when the word obedience had no meaning. In this earliest phase of humanity, life was raw and unfiltered. People lived without commands, without ranks, and without authority. Imagine a world where every single person acted based on their own instincts, their personal experiences, and their immediate needs. There was no social ladder to climb because there were no rungs. Survival was a deeply personal journey. If you hunted successfully, you ate. If you failed, you went hungry. It was that simple. No one had the right or the power to tell another person what to do. Think about that for a moment. No one could command you to hunt for them, build for them, or fight for them. Your life was entirely your own. Equality wasn't some lofty ideal or a philosophical concept people debated. It was the natural state of things, born from the complete absence of control. Nature was the great equalizer. It didn't care if you were strong or weak, clever or slow. A sudden storm, a lurking predator, these dangers treated everyone the same. The rules of the game were set by the environment, not by other people. Every decision was individual. If you chose to take a risky path and it paid off, the reward was yours. But if you made a mistake, the consequences fell squarely on your shoulders. It was a harsh and unpredictable world, no doubt about it. Life was unforgiving, but in its own way, it was completely free. In this world, no single voice carried more weight than another. Your opinion mattered just as much as anyone else's, because your survival depended on your own judgment. You didn't need anyone's permission to live, to seek food, or to find shelter. The very idea would have been absurd. So, where did power come from? Well, it didn't. Power, as we know it, had no place to grow. It couldn't take root, because the resources for survival, food, water, safety, didn't flow through a hierarchy of people. They flowed through chance, through effort, and through the whims of nature. You couldn't control others by withholding something they needed, because everyone was responsible for getting it themselves. This was a time when humans answered only to the rumble of thunder, the pangs of hunger, and the changing of the seasons. They didn't answer to each other. Life was a direct conversation between an individual and the world around them. As long as society remained this simple collection of self-reliant individuals, the concept of obedience was utterly foreign. It was like trying to describe color to someone who has only ever seen in black and white. It simply had no context, no function, and no meaning. This foundation of radical, untamed freedom is the starting point from which all human social structures, hierarchies, and systems of command would eventually grow. What do you think it would be like to live in such a world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The second topic is fear creates dependence. Have you ever wondered why we, as a species, follow leaders? Why do we form societies with rules and hierarchies? It wasn't always this way. For a long, long time, our ancestors were solitary beings, but the world around them began to change. It grew more threatening, more dangerous. The food sources they relied on shifted, new and deadlier predators emerged, and the simple act of surviving alone became an almost impossible gamble. Fear, a primal, powerful emotion, started to reshape human behavior. In this new, harsher world, isolation was no longer a sign of independence. It was a death sentence. And weakness was an invitation for disaster. So, slowly, tentatively, humans began to gather. It wasn't born from a grand vision of unity or a community. It was raw necessity, a simple calculation for survival. Being in a group meant more eyes to watch for predators, more hands to build shelters, and a coordinated effort to hunt for food. It meant your chances of seeing the next sunrise were significantly higher. But this newfound safety came with a hidden cost. Dependence. Suddenly, survival was no longer a personal challenge. It was a collective one. Think about it. Every decision now had ripple effects. Where does the group move for better resources? When is the safest time to hunt? How do we defend ourselves against a rival group or a pack of wolves? In a moment of crisis, a split second of hesitation could get everyone killed. Some individuals were just faster thinkers. They could spot patterns others missed. They could plan 2 steps ahead, or they had an uncanny intuition for danger. When these individuals spoke, people listened. Why? Because listening worked. Fear, that constant, nagging companion, made obedience feel like the most logical choice in the world. At first, this was just practical. It felt temporary. You follow the person who knows where the water is. You listen to the one who can predict the storm. It seemed like a simple, harmless exchange. But with every crisis averted, with every successful hunt led by someone else, a subtle shift was happening. Every time your survival depended on another person's judgment, a little piece of your individual autonomy chipped away. We began, without even realizing it, to trade our freedom for safety. It wasn't a conscious decision, not a single moment of surrender. It was a slow creeping process, a habit formed over countless generations. Dependence grew quietly in the shadow of fear, and once we became fully dependent on the group, on its leaders, for our very existence, obedience was no longer just a good idea, it had a powerful, unshakable reason to exist. It became the foundation of social structure. This shift from individual to collective survival is one of the most significant turning points in our history. The leader-follower dynamic wasn't born out of a desire for power or control. It was born from the cold, hard reality of a dangerous world. Fear created the need for leaders, and the success of following them cemented their role in human society. This dynamic is deeply embedded in our DNA. We see it play out everywhere, from small teams to entire nations. When we feel threatened or uncertain, our instinct is to look for guidance, for a strong voice to cut through the noise. It's a survival mechanism honed over millennia. But here's the critical question. What happens when that fear is manipulated? What happens when leaders create or exaggerate threats to maintain their position? The same instinct that helped us survive can also make us vulnerable. Fear makes us seek security, and in our search for security, we can sometimes give away too much. We might stop questioning. We might stop thinking for ourselves, because it feels safer to just follow. The story of our dependence is not just ancient history, it's a living part of our psychology. Understanding its origins is crucial. It reminds us that the relationship between the individual and the group, between freedom and safety, is a delicate balance. Fear remains the most powerful tool for influencing human behavior. We traded absolute freedom for collective security, and in doing so, we built civilizations. We created art, science, and culture things that would have been impossible in a world of solitary survival. But that trade-off comes with a permanent responsibility. The responsibility to be aware, to ask questions, to understand when obedience serves our collective good and when it simply serves the person in charge. The instinct to follow is powerful, but so is our capacity for critical thought. Our ancestors gave up some of their independence so we could live. The challenge for us, in a world far more complex than theirs, is to know when to follow, what to follow, and most importantly, why we are following. The fear may never go away entirely, but our awareness of it can be our greatest strength. The third topic is rules without writing. Have you ever wondered why we follow rules, even when no one is watching? Why we wait in line, say please and thank you, or feel a sting of guilt when we break a social norm? The answer isn't found in law books or constitutions. It goes much, much deeper, back to the very dawn of human society, to a time before writing, before laws, before kings. This is a story of how we learned to obey. Imagine a small group of early humans, surviving day to day in a harsh, unpredictable world. Their lives weren't governed by grand debates or written decrees. They were governed by action, by repetition. Over time, patterns began to emerge. Certain individuals, perhaps the swiftest and quietest, became the hunters. Others, strong and vigilant, took on the role of guardians. Some, with a keen eye for detail, became the gatherers, knowing which plants were safe and which were poison. These roles weren't assigned in a meeting. No one voted. They were simply habits that stuck. The group functioned best when people did what they were good at, over and over again. This repetition wasn't just about efficiency, it was about survival. It created a rhythm, a predictable flow to their chaotic existence. Day after day, the hunters hunted, the gatherers gathered, and the guardians watched. This repeated action became an expectation. But what happened when someone broke the rhythm? What if a hunter decided to sleep in, or a guardian wandered off, distracted by a colorful bird? The consequences weren't just personal. They rippled through the entire group. A failed hunt meant hunger for everyone. A moment of inattention could lead to a devastating surprise attack from a predator or a rival group. A gatherer bringing back the wrong berries could poison the clan. The group suffered collectively. Food shortages, sudden danger, and internal conflict would follow any break in the established pattern. Survival demanded consistency. It demanded that people do what was expected of them. Slowly, painstakingly, through trial and error, a lot of suffering. These simple expectations began to harden. They were transforming into something more powerful, unwritten rules. These weren't rules like we think of them today. They weren't carved into stone or proclaimed by a leader. They existed in the minds of every member of the group, everyone who's understood. You do your part. You don't take more than your share. You watch out for the others. You contribute. These were the foundational principles of their society, learned not through teaching, but through living. Breaking these rules brought consequences, but not necessarily the kind we might expect. In a small, tight-knit group, violence is a risky, destabilizing force. The real punishment was often more subtle, yet far more potent. It was social. It was the cold shoulder, the looks of disapproval, the loss of trust. In a world where your very survival depended on the person next to you, losing their trust was catastrophic. The ultimate punishment was exclusion. Being cast out of the group wasn't just a social rejection. It was a death sentence. Alone, a human was incredibly vulnerable. Belonging meant access to food, protection from predators, and warmth from the fire. Belonging meant survival. The fear of being pushed out, of being left alone in the wilderness was a powerful motivator. It kept people in line far more effectively than any physical threat could. Through this process, our ancestors learned a fundamental lesson about humanity. Order reduces chaos. Rules, even unspoken ones, made life more predictable. Predictability meant safety. You knew that if you did your part, others would likely do theirs. You could plan. You could rest. You could raise children with a greater chance of success. People followed these unwritten rules, not because they were forced to by a tyrant, but simply because they worked. Life was better, safer, and more stable for everyone when the rules were followed. But this new order came at a cost. It was the price of civilization. This newfound stability required a sacrifice. Individual freedom. A person was no longer completely free to act on pure instinct or whim. Their behavior was now shaped by the expectations of the group. Your desires were secondary to the needs of the collective. This was a profound shift in the human experience. It was the moment obedience became a routine, a built-in part of our social software. And here's the crucial part. Humans weren't obeying a person. There wasn't a single chief or a council of elders dictating everything. They were obeying a system. They were obeying a shared set of rules and expectations that everyone, from the strongest hunter to the youngest child, was subject to. This idea of obedience to a system, rather than just a powerful individual, is one of the most important developments in human history. It's the invisible architecture that holds our societies together even today. Of course, once a system of rules exists, another question inevitably arises. Who makes sure the rules are followed? Who settles disputes when expectations clash? Who decides the punishment when a rule is broken? This need for an enforcer, an arbiter, a leader, is the next step in our journey. The creation of unwritten rules naturally paved the way for the rise of leadership. Because once you have rules, you will always need someone to uphold them. And that is a story for another time. So the next time you find yourself instinctively following a social custom, remember its ancient origins. You're participating in a ritual that began tens of thousands of years ago. A pact made by our ancestors to choose order over chaos, survival over instinct, and community over the individual. You are honoring the invisible system that allowed us to survive, to thrive, and to build the world we live in today. The fourth topic is authority takes control. Have you ever wondered why we follow leaders? Why do we listen to some people and not others? It's a story that goes back to the very beginning of human society. A story about rules, trust, and the quiet birth of power. Let's travel back in time to a world where our ancestors lived in small, tight-knit groups. Their lives were governed by unwritten rules, simple understandings forged from necessity. Don't eat the red berries. Stay close to the fire at night. Hunt together, share the catch. These weren't laws handed down from on high. They were survival guides, learned through trial and error. For a long time, these rules were enough. The world was dangerous, but it was simple. The rules kept them safe. But what happens when the rules aren't clear? What happens when two hunters both claim the best part of the hunt? Or when a family wants to build their shelter in a spot another family has already chosen? This is where conflict is born. And with conflict comes a new need. A need for a decision. A need for someone to say, this is how it will be. Who do you turn to in that moment? You don't look for the strongest person. Not necessarily. You don't look for the loudest. You look for the person you trust. The one whose voice has guided you before. Maybe it was the elder who knew which plants were safe to eat. Maybe it was the hunter who always found the best trails. These weren't power-hungry individuals. They didn't seize control. Instead, power was given to them. It was a natural consequence of respect and reliance. Their words carried weight because they had proven their wisdom time and time again. When a dispute arose, the group would turn to this familiar voice. What should we do? They'd ask. And when that person spoke, their decision settled the argument. Their judgment ended the conflict. This was the first spark of authority. It wasn't born from force or a grand declaration. It was born from a quiet consensus, a shared need for clarity and order. It was authority as a service, a tool to keep the group from falling apart. But this simple solution had profound consequences. It changed everything. Suddenly, some voices became final, while others started to fade into the background. The collective wisdom of the group began to be concentrated in a single individual, and a crucial shift happened. People began to obey not just the rules, but the person who interpreted the rules. Obedience was no longer just about avoiding immediate danger, like a predator in the bushes. It was now about maintaining social harmony. This new authority figure had to justify their position, and they did so through the promise of protection and order. Follow my lead, the message went, and I will ensure we have stability. I will make the hard decisions so we can all live in peace. And people listened. They obeyed because obedience brought predictability. It brought an end to the constant, draining arguments. It created a more stable, less chaotic world to live in. But here's the catch. Stability can make temporary solutions permanent. The person who was once just a respected advisor slowly became a permanent leader. The role of decision maker became an institution. And once that happened, questioning authority started to feel risky. If these personas' decisions brought stability, then questioning them felt like questioning stability itself. It felt like inviting chaos back into the community. It felt dangerous. This is where the very fabric of society began to change. The old, flat structure of the group, where everyone's voice had a certain weight, began to transform. A hierarchy started to take shape. Those who were closer to the person in authority, their family, their allies, gained more influence. They gained a new kind of security that wasn't just about finding food or shelter. It was about social position. Power no longer flowed from survival skills alone. It started to flow through your place in this new social structure. Obedience, which was once an occasional necessity to resolve a specific conflict, became an expectation. It became the default setting for social interaction. You were expected to follow the leader's decisions, not just when danger was obvious, but all the time. The leader was no longer just a guide. They were the director of the group's future. Their vision became the group's vision. This system, born from a simple need to solve arguments, grew into something much larger and more complex. It created a framework for larger societies to exist. Without this concentration of authority, it's hard to imagine how we could have built cities, formed nations, or created the complex world we live in today. Authority allowed for large-scale cooperation, for projects that no small group could ever accomplish on their own. But this system also came with a cost. The equality that once defined those early human groups faded away. The a person is a person mentality was replaced by a system of status and rank. Some people were born into positions of power, while others were born into a life of obedience. The voice of the individual became quieter, often drowned out by the single, amplified voice of authority. Think about our world today. We see this legacy everywhere. We have governments, bosses, and leaders of all kinds. We follow their rules and decisions, often without a second thought. We do it because it brings order to our lives. It allows millions of us to live together in relative peace. But the tension that existed at the very beginning is still with us. The tension between the need for order and the desire for individual freedom, between the wisdom of the leader and the wisdom of the crowd. The story of authority is not a story of good versus evil. It's a story of human trade-offs. We gave up a measure of our individual autonomy in exchange for security and stability. We empowered certain individuals to lead us, and in doing so, we created the possibility for both great achievements and great injustice. Understanding this origin story is crucial. It reminds us that authority is not some magical force that has always existed. It is a human invention, created to solve a human problem. And because we created it, we also have the power to question it, to shape it, and to ensure that it serves the many, not just the few. The next time you follow an order or accept a decision from someone in charge, take a moment to think about that long, winding path from our ancestors. Think about that first person who was asked to settle a dispute, and the world of consequences that flowed from that single moment of trust. The story of authority is the story of us. The fifth topic is obedience becomes normal. Have you ever wondered why we obey, why we follow rules, respect authority, and fit into systems we never chose? It's a question that cuts to the very core of what it means to be human. Let's travel back in time, to a point before kings, before laws, before the very idea of a boss. Our ancestors lived in small, fluid groups. Leadership was temporary, earned through skill or wisdom, not inherited. Survival was a collective effort, and everyone had a voice because every contribution mattered. Power was a tool for the group, not a possession of an individual. But something changed. As our groups grew larger and societies became more complex, a new dynamic emerged. The shift wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was a slow creeping. It began with a simple choice. The choice between the chaos of total freedom and the security of order. Think about it. With the rise of agriculture, we had land to protect and harvests to manage. Predictability became more valuable than ever. We needed structure to ensure there was food on the table, a roof over our heads, and safety from outsiders. This is where the bargain was struck. In exchange for order and certainty, we began to cede a little bit of our individual autonomy. We started to listen to a single leader, a council or a set of rules that promised stability. At first, this obedience was a conscious decision, a strategic choice for a better, safer life. If we all follow this plan, our ancestors might have thought, we'll all be better off. And for a time, they were right. Order brought reliable food sources, organized defense, and a shared sense of purpose. It worked. The real transformation happened over generations. As obedience became the norm, it stopped feeling like a choice at all. It became a habit, a tradition, a fundamental part of the social fabric. Children were no longer born into a world of fluid options. They were born into pre-existing systems with established hierarchies. You didn't choose to enter the system. The system was simply the world you knew. Power, once temporary and earned, began to stabilize. It became predictable, attached to certain families or roles, and passed down through proximity and lineage rather than merit. This process profoundly shaped human behavior and even our sense of self. Obedience wasn't just about following orders anymore. It was about survival and belonging. Those who obeyed the rules, who fit neatly into the structure, they received protection, resources, and social acceptance. They were safe. On the other hand, those who questioned, who resisted, who dared to step out of line, faced serious consequences. Exclusion, punishment, or even exile. The message was clear. Conform to survive. Our brains, brilliant adaptation machines, learned this lesson well. We developed a deep-seated instinct to respect authority and follow the group. It became a cognitive shortcut. Instead of evaluating every single decision from scratch, it was far more efficient to trust the established leaders and rules. This saved mental energy and reduced social friction. Over centuries, this choice for certainty over equality became hardwired. We came to associate authority with safety and hierarchy with stability. It just felt natural. It felt right. This wasn't necessarily born from a place of malice or a grand conspiracy for control. It wasn't the rise of cruelty for its own sake, but rather the rise of permanence. People weren't trying to be tyrants. They were trying to build something that would last, a civilization that could withstand famine, war, and internal chaos. But in seeking this permanence, a critical shift occurred. Power, which once served the survival of the group, began to serve itself. Its primary goal became its own preservation and expansion. Once power became self-serving, it needed to justify its existence. And so, ideologies were born. We were told that leaders were chosen by the gods, that kings had a divine right to rule, that the social order was natural and unchangeable. These stories reinforced the structure, making obedience not just a practical choice, but a moral and spiritual duty. Questioning the king became the same as questioning God or the universe itself. The hierarchy was no longer just a system. It was the correct way of being. This single moment when humans learned to internalize obedience is the foundation for almost every civilization that has ever existed. The laws we write, the governments we form, the corporations we work for, the institutions we build, all of them grew from this ancient seed. They are all built upon the assumption that a large group of people will follow a set of rules and respect the chain of command. Our entire modern world, with its incredible complexity and scale, is made possible by this fundamental lesson in obedience. Think about your own life. You stop at a red light, even when no one is around. You pay your taxes. You follow instructions from your boss. Most of the time, we don't even think about it. It's automatic. We've inherited thousands of years of social conditioning that tells us this is the way the world works. And in many ways, this collective obedience allows for incredible feats of cooperation, from building skyscrapers to running the internet. But there's a flip side. This deep-seated instinct to obey can also be a vulnerability. It explains why good people can sometimes participate in terrible things when instructed by an authority figure. It's why we can feel trapped in systems that no longer serve us, whether it's an unfulfilling job or an unjust political structure. The comfort of certainty can sometimes blind us to the possibility of a better, more equitable way. The lesson of obedience was so powerful, so effective for survival, that it has never been unlearned. It's a part of us. So, the next time you find yourself following a rule without a second thought, take a moment to reflect. You're not just performing a simple action, you are participating in a story that began thousands of years ago, a story about the fundamental human trade-off between freedom and security. Understanding this history doesn't mean we should descend into chaos and reject all authority, but it does give us the power to be more conscious of our choices. It allows us to ask important questions. Who does this rule serve? Is this hierarchy just? Is this a system I truly believe in? By understanding why we obey, we can begin to choose when and how we obey. We can reclaim a piece of that ancient autonomy, not to tear down the world, but to build a better one. We can learn to distinguish between obedience that leads to collective good and obedience that simply preserves power for its own sake. The story of obedience is the story of humanity, and the next chapter is still ours to write. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into our shared history. If this sparked some thoughts, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy exploring these big ideas, make sure to subscribe for more. See you in the next one.